movie for? Like Little Mermaid, I get, right? Like Little Mermaid is such a classic. You know, people who grew up with that now have kids, right? People who grew up with Snow White are dead.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kids Media Club podcast. Hi guys, how are we all doing?
Good.
Doing
It's
grand.
Tuesday. It's Tuesday and it already feels like Friday. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's one of those. Well, we're in today just to have a chinwag, right? We've no guests. We're just shooting the breeze in the typical Kids Media Club podcast style. So what's going?
Is this 101?
No, it's 102. 102.
102. Oh, we're into our second
Century.
Century, yeah, centennial.
So
Awesome.
what are we going to chat about?
I was going to bring up YouTube. Funny that. We never talk about YouTube. I just wanted to chat about how they're changing the metrics, particularly with regard to YouTube Shorts, which got me thinking this week. And I think it's kind of interesting because they are changing how they measure a view of YouTube Shorts. And it used to be that you had to watch, I'm doing the inverted comma sign, watch a video for between 1 and 3 seconds. So there was a limited amount of engagement, but some engagement nonetheless, for it to count as a view. But now they're measuring a view as anything where the video is moving. So you could actually be scrolling through your feed, and if the video is moving as you're scrolling past it, still a view.
And my understanding is that's the same as TikTok and Instagram already do. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the rationale behind it, is to bring it in line with them. What I think is a bit of a shame. I mean, I've seen stats saying that it will inflate views by about 30%. So obviously, thinking about those numbers, it's great for creators, particularly if they're trying to sell sponsorships or brand partnerships. There's going to be an inflation in their shorts view numbers, but it doesn't really count as an engaged view. And the engaged view metric, which will still be accessible on the YouTube system, is still what they're going to use as the standard for joining the YouTube partner program and things like that. So actually, that does remain the more important statistic. But now, over the top of it, this shiny kind of vanity metric that's going to look a lot higher going forward.
Yeah, it does sound like a real vanity metric in terms of shiny big numbers.
Isn't it funny that the benchmark metric will be behind the wall, behind the box, and the vanity metric will be in front of the box? I mean, I think it's obviously going to majorly inflate YouTube views for every, YouTube views for all channels. I think it's going to make it difficult for any of the third party data providers on YouTube to, they're not going to be able to dedupe it or try to, you know what I mean? That's going to be challenging. I mean, if it brings it in line with TikTok and Instagram Reels, then it does make sense. But one of the major issues with Shorts is the monetization opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that remains a major challenge. And I think definitely for kids media brands out there, who are pulling in Shorts views and so the views of their channel are going up, and their views of the channel are going to go up even more. But yet the monetization and the revenue that they're receiving isn't going to go up. So it's kind of a really amorphous, unhelpful kind of. Isn't
aren't Shorts in some ways? It feels like they're the marketing element of the YouTube ecosystem. That for a YouTube creator, you kind of lean into Shorts as a way to get noticed and drive people to your kind of longer form content. So it almost feels like that people don't view it as a monetization stream within that YouTube ecosystem in the same way.
I think there are Shorts channels, and actually those ones tend to be getting less and less now, where the pure Shorts channels were piling through the views and making some money. But now that's going to get harder and harder, because particularly now as YouTube is looking to take share of viewing on connected TVs, then just having a channel of Shorts doesn't give rich a viewing experience. So yes, to your point, those shorts are a great discovery tool. They're the little carrot, and if you want to take a bite of that carrot, then you go onto the channel and you start consuming some longer form content. So it still works in that sense, but it's difficult to see how it isn't just a pure vanity play for those who then want to be able to report markedly higher views on shorts. The test will be, as Emily said, if you can actually get access to what those engaged views are, or what impact those shorts then have on the longer form viewing on your channel, then you will get a sense of whether those inflated metrics actually mean something and have a value, or if they are just that 30% uplift that everybody has been given.
And is it the case then that the engaged views are only visible to the user and kind of
to
YouTube
the creator, yeah,
to the creator,
but they're not visible to the viewer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And are people shorts are the kind of the discovery hack, right? Like it's what TikTok has done in terms of grouping people by interest type, being able to read what people are into. That basically that same behavior brought over to YouTube Shorts is has been groundbreaking, I think, for content from a content platform planning point of view. But ultimately, you're having to put resource into another production avenue, and without driving revenue. So it is, or at least direct revenue. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
Is it also the case that is this an example of TikTok really kind of setting the weather for social media and everyone else having to kind of live
TikTok
with it?
has definitely been a disruptor, and all the other platforms have had to zig and are all probably really gasping for TikTok to get snuffed out in a with a policy pillow of from the US, because what they've done is super disruptive and super potent, right? Like it's the behavior, their rise in terms of engagement, the behavior that just, it's groundbreaking, right? Like, and I know it's obvious as sliced bread, but before we were all grouped by our connections, and if you were into something, I might be into something. But now it's all grouped by interest type, and it's infinitely more potent, infinitely more, it's got just so much more potential, way better for discovery. So I think it is. The other platforms kind of have to follow suit as to what TikTok have done. Yeah.
It's interesting, when we've touched on it before, that by following suit, though, they're all becoming a clone of each other.
The same thing,
way.
They are.
It will be interesting to see if by mirroring what TikTok does and then flipping it the other way, TikTok have also increased the duration of video that you can upload to TikTok, which mirrors YouTube. Who's going to win out in that battle? And policy aside, it will come down to who really knows their users better. And that's the mystery of the algorithm, isn't it? This interest-based recommendation algorithm that we're all now completely hooked on.
One of the things that I think YouTube has an advantage over TikTok still is that it feels like the home for long-form video content, and that ecosystem of having shorts,
the hybrid,
drive to kind of the real home of that content. It feels like the YouTube has the structure to do that in a way that TikTok, I very often don't kind of follow a clip that I've seen on TikTok to the user account. I'll just kind of flick through. Whereas
it depends how much the TikTok algorithm bullies me, but I have jumped.
Yeah.
Like I watched The Help because it just bullied me to watch The Help again. I've seen the movie years ago, but it was like a video earworm, if you know what I mean. It was just constantly showing me clips of The Help. So,
but I feel like that's YouTube, kind of an exception, really. Whereas YouTube, it's kind of
it's much more seamless. Like you can slip in and all that kind of stuff.
And YouTube fits neatly or much neater into the telly box, right? Talking about connected televisions, not. Even though there is more TikTok being consumed through TVs, it's nowhere near the level of consumption of YouTube. So,
and it's because it's got that vertical video thing that just doesn't really work. I have a strong opinion on something. Might be controversial. I'm just going to drop it right here. We haven't prepped this at all. I don't think the shorts format should be allowed for kids. I say this as a TikTok addict, as a self-professed, thrice recovering, currently relapsing TikTok addict. I think the shorts, that swipey shorts format, I can see it in my own brain, drives distraction, drives
difficult to argue against that.
I think, and I don't know what the level needs to be. I don't even know how you police that, but I definitely think for preschoolers, shouldn't be anywhere near the swipeable shorts format.
So do you think as well, in terms of advice you'd give for preschool IP owners, that you'd kind of advise against them being on TikTok? They need the shorts format. So preschool IP owners on TikTok, that was not the first thing I'd be telling you to invest in. I would definitely be telling you to invest in YouTube. You need to invest in the shorts format on YouTube to do YouTube these days, to have success. If you don't do it, you're neutering yourself. But it is one of the things that I personally say is super problematic, because that swipey format.
Is it in YouTube Kids?
It's not in YouTube Kids at the moment, I don't think. I think it's interesting, the changes that are happening with YouTube Kids, where YouTube Kids has been deleted off smart TVs. YouTube Kids profiles are now folded into your YouTube app on a smart TV. In my head, that untethers the YouTube Kids app that lives on mobile devices to potentially do a shorts format if they wanted to, because it's no longer it's a separate non-smart TV product. So that's, I know nothing about the inner workings of YouTube or how that all works out, but that's the logic I see in my head.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with that. I think at a time when little brains are very elastic, I'm not sure that that's a great thing to be feeding them.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
It's just that dopamine vibe. It's
it
that, and I listen. I have such a difficult relationship with this, because I love TikTok. It brings so much culture and funny and great things to my life that some of which I share with you guys periodically. But I definitely see a difference in myself in terms of
same
brain thinking, focus. It's mad.
And TikTok is
it does feel addictive in a way that you don't really want to introduce a kind of an addictive sort of
addictive
element into a young child's kind of developing brain, really.
Yeah, agree. Well, yes, that's. I wonder if we'll see pushback against that, actually.
Yeah.
Now you've made the point, I wonder if we will see pushback.
I just think of all of the things to go for. It's just something really clear. Do you know what I mean? Just say that shouldn't be a format that we're pushing to kids.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm not usually one for the policy side. I want to do right by kids. I don't tend to get involved so much in some of the policy issues, because the world is evolving and we all need to get on the horse or be left behind. And I am firmly on the horse. I'm looking on the horse going, I don't like this little bit. This little bit is not working for me.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, maybe there's an argument for YouTube where you almost look at those regulations and you hold them up to the line. Maybe some of the copper regulations could be walked back and then some new ones introduced. I mean, I wonder whether there's an argument to kind of to open that up again.
I definitely think so. Because I think, regulation tends to be a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It doesn't exist in a static environment. I mean, the regulatory legislature moves very slowly, and usually by the time something is coming to force, it's way out of date. So I think in itself it needs to be an evolving, organic way of looking at how you regulate consumption and kids on these platforms.
It needs to be more than regulation, but it's not. It needs and this is my frustration with Silicon Valley, and since the start, it's are we doing good with this?
Yeah.
Are we doing harm with this? Right? And that, it's engagement at all costs. It's engagement, and the cost is irrelevant, Because engagement drives revenue, and revenue drives Wall Street, stock market, etc.
I think that we've got a period in front of us where those Wall Street masters are still going to be the drivers. Always the line up and to the right. They don't like it when that line doesn't go up and to the right.
Yeah, because everything just keeps on going up, right? Like that's how the world works.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, yes, but kind of keeping on the YouTube theme. I was reading yesterday about BBC Children's putting news round on YouTube, and they're also doing an education game on Roblox, which is arguably a little bit late, but yay.
I mean, it's a real example of finally deciding to be where kids are.
Yeah, well, I mean, the news round has been on YouTube for many years, but I guess there's a few changes coming. And then there was also the piece about where there was a lot of pearl clutching in the UK. I was looking over about Blue Peter not being live. It's not live. Even though I think a lot of it's been, pre-recorded for a long time.
Has anyone watched it live?
Go on, Joe. You love Blue Peter.
Yes, but change is coming. But you know what? Whilst we're talking about Newsround, I mean, do you know what? Newsround is a stalwart of programming and heavily used in schools, and anything that gets kids engaged with news is a good thing in my book. I was listening to a fascinating podcast earlier this week that was talking about how YouTube is disrupting news, and it really made me think about what we've been talking about, algorithm and interest-based discovery. And it used to be, when we were kids, and particularly, in our parents' generation, you sat down to watch the news. You sought out the news at 6 p.m., at 10 p.m., or you bought a newspaper. You sought out the news. Now we've got a generation for whom the news is served to them. So again, very often it's the algorithm that serves news to them. And then if they're interested in finding out more about the story, then they will go off and seek out an opinion around it. Let's park, where you find those opinions and left-leaning and right-leaning sources of those opinions. But this algorithmic discovery of news really kind of made me think, because news was always something that you sought out. So this was what I was thinking about in terms of kind of news round being on YouTube. Again, how do you get that in front of kids? Well, you don't just put it on YouTube and expect them to seek it out. You got to really now start playing the news game, serving it algorithmically. Yeah.
And I mean, that generation are used to getting their news from social media, and they're used to sharing, engaging with news stories and sharing it with friends. And it's part of the currency of the way they get their news. So it seems a complete no-brainer for News Round to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean,
how does that affect impartiality, though? Because when you're BBC and you're very, very keen on presenting a certain standard of news, but yet the algorithm game feeds engagement, so the more sensational news pieces, perhaps. There's a bit of a tension that I was thinking about when I was reading about it.
But I do think it's such, back to the TikTok conversation, that shorts conversation, I think that is such an opportunity for news. I know we had Sophie from the News Movement on probably around a year ago now, but short, snappy, informational, trying to have that underpinned with editorial rigor, but it needs to be presented in a really compelling way with a really compelling presenter, and not. And that doesn't necessarily mean a TV presenter all the time. Sometimes somebody who's really good at social they're good at social because they're not really good on TV. Although I will say, kind of a funny one that sits between the two conversations we've just had. Maddie Moat, who's a BBC kids presenter on CBBC, and she's been doing stuff on YouTube for years. She released on TikTok. So this is going to get meta. On TikTok, she released a video that was like, how to manage your YouTube kids profile so that it's the safest that it possibly can be. And she did this really compelling, TikTok video. Hello, I'm Maddie. And it's actually well, I took a cursory look at the stats of her channel. It seems to have gone really, really well. So informational content like news, like that, when it's delivered in a native way. And we've been talking about this for ages. It's like, just because you can make TV doesn't mean you can make a TikTok.
Oh, no. And that was one of the points I wanted to raise about Newsround. How is it going to have to evolve then when it's now sitting in an algorithmic news discovery ecosystem?
And like, I think sensationalism, unfortunately, is a part of the internet. But I do also see, at least I see, other creators, as I said, like the news movement, like Maddie per se, like rising to the top with quality information. And you know, I would say there is an onus on the platforms to prioritize stuff that is verifiable. And obviously, in terms of like the whole promoting fake news thing and all that kind of stuff, whether they do that, it's back to not doing harm, right, or just chasing engagement. But that's something that that there should be a requirement for. I know a load of journalists on TikTok that are really fun and break down news stories of the day in a compelling and bite-sized way, and that's honestly how I get my news these days.
Yeah, same.
I wonder whether, I mean, when you mentioned about the news movement, I think one of the things that they do really well is they don't just kind of report on the news. They find an angle on the news that's really relevant to that demographic and those users. And I sometimes think with Newsround, sometimes it comes across as news that adults think kids should be interested in. And I guess moving on to social media, it's whether there's scope to almost start from what the audience is interested in and try and match that with the news in some ways. I'm not sure how much I'm making sense there, but I feel like there's some lessons
you
maybe
are.
to learn.
Because I think, given that young people exist in this digital ecosystem that they swim around in relatively fluidly, then when it comes to news, and they might be discovering news next to a piece of sporting content or next to a piece of animated content, then they all kind of collide. And that's one of the interesting things that certainly I've been discovering in sport, because we were just talking about popularity of anime. Yep. But, a lot of sport tends to think of its fans as just sport fans without realizing that a teenage LA Dodgers fan is also a huge anime fan. And now the MLB has just released a promo for the new season that's all animated in an anime style. Dodgers have got Otani, a Japanese player. So they found those cultural touch points and then being able to expand on it. And news is no different in my view. And that's
absolutely.
That's what you were just saying, that I think is one of the strong points about the news movement, because they're born from that generation and from that social first consumption. They look sideways and find a way to weave those cultural touch points into news. And I think that actually makes it more engaging rather than that this is what the parents want you to know type approach.
Yeah,
definitely. And like executed in a digital first way, I think.
Yeah, natively.
Newsround could have like a great voice in that. It's kind of, when you're looking at the devil of the announcement, it's like, because Newsround have had a YouTube channel for years, but I guess this is specifically talking about the bulletins are going to be published there alongside iPlayer and CBBC as they usually are. Progress is progress.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What else have we got to discuss?
Speaking of things that have got far too much progress going on, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Snow White. Yeah.
Oh dear.
The lid is off.
So the kind of question there is, did Rachel Zegler get thrown under the bus, or did she pull the bus down on top of herself?
I do think some of the culture wars I do think that the culture wars in the US play out in a way that's very noisy online, and I am not convinced of how much impact it has on an individual's consideration as to whether they're going to go see Snow White or not.
Yeah, I hear that. One of the facts on Snow White that I found particularly interesting was that it did relatively better in red states than it did in blue states.
I saw that. So that's interesting.
So what does that mean? Is it like all of the children of Republican voters are kind of watching it out of spite.
Hate watching it.
Hate watching.
It's just that no one cares, right? Like, and
Yeah,
I do think
probably that's more like
there's problems with the film, you know, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. Like, let's just start right there. Like, you know, the fact that they didn't cast people from the community, you know, as the actual actors is problematic. Like, Rachel wasn't wrong. Like, have you watched the original Snow White recently? I had to watch it for work in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's so of its time. Like,
it's so old.
It's
just
so
like,
old, and it
how
really,
many films that old does anyone watch?
yeah,
I mean,
and it
if you
really
don't watch
doesn't
the live
stand
action-
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, some films there are films from old films that stand up. It just doesn't stand up, in my opinion. So I think that's what she was.
When was it out? When did Snow White, the first one, come out?
Is it 50s?
I thought it was earlier than that.
Oh.
I'm the one mid-rant here, Andy. You get Googling.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just think I'm not sure. People blow up all this culture war stuff. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it has no impact. I think it has impact at a policy level. I think it has impact.
Yes.
You know, and the one I kind of equate to this is when Chapek hugely fumbled the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Like, and he made an absolute pig's ear of that, which is, in my opinion, ultimately the reason that he got fired. But, you know, did it stop people consumers going to Disney's parks? I'm not sure. Did it impact? Obviously, it had a huge impact on dealings with political parties and stuff afterwards. But, you know, in terms of, like, if we're looking at content engagement, content performance, you know, maybe this is just the wrong film. I mean, I kind of felt like Disney were on the wrong road with these live action reboots for a while.
And I do wonder if some of it is misdirection too. Because, sunk cost fallacy. They were already on this, track.
I mean, I think the whole thing with, so the producer came out and has said that he had to fly over and tear a strip off of Rachel for kind of her comments on social media. And that feels a bit like the timing to do that now just feels like the movie is tanked, so we're going to blame whoever.
Yeah, gives them an out.
Yeah. Why weren't you managing that in the first instance?
Exactly.
Right.
The time to manage that would have been way before. I do think we talk a lot about the divisive nature of politics and everyone wanting to turn the temperature down a bit. I mean, I think Rachel Zegler's comments about wishing that Trump supporters never have a moment of peace, and she leaned into a lot of that stuff. That doesn't help sort of turn the temperature down if you're worried about sort of toxic nature of political rhetoric. But I don't think it ultimately had as much impact as people are arguing. Going back to your question on fact checking when the first Snow White came out, 1937.
Whoa! You were decades off, Joe.
I was.
Yeah. So you've got to find a film from 1937 that people are watching now. There just aren't any. It's kind of in a category of one in a way.
It's interesting though, isn't it? You know, back to your point, there's all of this rhetoric and chatter that doesn't necessarily equate to what the ordinary cinema goer is thinking about and what their motivations are for going to see the movie. And does it influence them? Maybe they're not influenced by it. Maybe, you know, the teenager who's interested in going, they've not heard all of that chatter because it all takes place on platforms where the old executives and the studio heads hang out, which is, you know, radio or website.
The irony is my youngest daughter, she said, I want to go and see Snow White. And partly one of the reasons she wants to go and see Snow White is that it's a bully aversion instinct, I think, for like what she perceives as kind of people going over the top on Rachel Zegler's kind of being responsible for it. So she's definitely in the Rachel camp.
And again, that's like young people zig when the grown-ups zag. So really, it doesn't matter if the reviews are stinkers. Well, let's bring in the Minecraft movie. The reviews are not great for that. Will that impact the teenagers for whom Minecraft has been a huge part of their lives and that they feel quite protective and fond about it? No, I don't think they'll give a fig. It's a chance to go out with their mates.
Fig.
I was worried there for a minute. I thought, what's she going to say?
Put a content warning on. But, I mean, I think, again, it goes back to that gentle Minions trend we spoke about. You know, they were getting dressed up in suits and going to watch Minions because it was something that was familiar from when they were 5 or 6. It gave them a bit of a kind of a tongue-in-cheek reason to get dressed up and go out with their friends. I think kind of the Minecraft movie, for all its bad reviews, is going to be something that people want to go and see because they just love Minecraft and it's been such a part of their lives.
They love Jack Black and whatever, right? Yeah. But that's why, back to Snow White. It's like, who is this movie for? Right? Like, it's not like Little Mermaid, I get, right? Like, Little Mermaid is such a classic of, you know, for people people who grew up with that now have kids, right? People who grew up with Snow White are dead. Sorry. Well. That's so brutal. That's so brutal. But you know what I mean? Like, there's no, Snow White wasn't even a big thing. Like, I'm just aware of her. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't
need to cut that one.
I don't remember watching it either.
I mean, I always felt with Snow White, the remake, is that you could have done an interesting remake of Snow White, but you would have had to really leaned into it being a complete sort of a complete refresh of it. So they sort of tried that a bit because from what I've read, the fairest of them all is that she's fair as in kind of as in dealing well with people rather than being kind of the pretty.
Oh, interesting.
But I feel like there's always going to be that elastic band. If you're doing that for Disney, you're never really going to be able to
push the boundary.
Be too radical in terms of how you kind of reinvent that. And so it almost feels like it'd been better off DreamWorks doing a version of Snow White where they completely reinvented it wrong.
Yeah.
Do a Shrek on it.
Yeah. No, it's a challenge. Yeah. And I always hate a narrative where it's like, let's just go and attack the young female. There was a bit of that about Wednesday with Jenna Ortega. And it's like, you know, whatever, like she's in her 20s doing her thing. Like, maybe you don't like everything she says. She's super talented.
Yeah.
You know, she's propped up numerous musical movies in the last number of years. Like, I think she's going to be okay. But like just to bun fight for her. And again, like you were saying about the producer, like if you weren't managing that in the first instance, then you're the problem, not her. Like, you know what I mean?
And I quite enjoy some of her completely, I don't know, off PR, off message bits when she's kind of doing an opening for a film. I think I saw something where she was in a Marvel thing. I didn't even know it existed. And she was asked why, Rachel Zegler was asked why she was why she took the movie. And she said, I just really needed a job. But, it wasn't kind of, she wasn't hyping the movie at all.
But joking aside, for the younger generations, that's what they get from their YouTube creators. Yeah. That honesty, that brutality, that sometimes they screw up or they, don't say things that are as manicured or PR'd as the studios used to release them. So, in a way, that she's likely to get a much more favourable reaction from young people because she's like that than the pill-clutching studio heads and trade press.
Or at least the people who like her will authentically like her because of who she is and will stick with her and be loyal rather than it being like, oh, the mask has slipped in some over-manicured version of what you are and what you do.
Yeah, completely. She's normal. She's young. She's normal. She screws up on occasion. That actually is a much better message and more endearing to young people than someone
who was probably told off and she didn't give a fig.
She was definitely told off, I'm sure. Maybe she'll do some interesting indie movies. She's gonna be in Evita on the West End, which
she's a phenomenal singer. It wouldn't put me off going to see her in a stage musical.
Not at all.
Oh no, those tickets are gonna go like hotcakes. Going back to the Minecraft one, who was it? Is the director kind of surprised me for the Minecraft movie? Let me just quickly Google who it was, but what is it? It was one of those ones where I was just like, really? I was kind of surprised.
Jared Hess.
The director. Yeah, and what's he directed before?
Napoleon Dynamite.
That's it.
Oh, yes.
Nacho Libre.
Yeah, which isn't kind of like my first pick to helm a $150 million movie.
Interesting. Because my first reaction to that is that Napoleon Dynamite and Nacho Libre have got that similar kind of bonkers humor
Right.
that young people who grow up playing Minecraft have. And they're often leveraged in Minecraft. I mean, you know, some of the stuff, because it was sandbox, some of the stuff you could build and do and enact there. I mean, you know, look at Skibbity Toilet. Yeah, the bonkers, bizarre young Gen Z humor fits right in that Minecraft world. So actually, I mean, I've seen the stinker reviews for it, but I'd be interested to see it just to see how bonkers it goes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder as well whether that's the influence of Barbie picking a slightly left field director to
Interesting.
help
a
big kids franchise. Yeah, but I'm sure you're right there. I think just on that, the goodwill and that kind of nostalgia for amongst kids for stuff that they grew up playing, I think Minecraft would do really well.
Yeah, it holds such a dear place in a whole generation's hearts.
Yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed, even if it's not the greatest movie. It's got Jason Momoa and it's got Jack Black. If it does have a bit of that bonkers humor that it goes right over the grown-ups' heads, but the younger generation get, I can see it being successful.
Yeah, I'm into it. Need to get my ticket.
Yeah, same.
Might go Friday.